Like you don't see the bell, the characters don't ring the bell, you don't see the characters doing anything with the bell. The bell originates from off stage by some, like you said, something out there. The bell is ringing.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to No Script, an unscripted conversation about theater's best scripts. I'm Jacob Mann Christensen.
And I am Jackson Nikolai. We are here at the start of one of the great pillars of this podcast. Terms of our season.
That's true. We every season we do our best to program a huge variety of scripts. It's kind of one of the missions of this podcast is to look at scripts at different levels. You know, we look at very, very new scripts. We look at established old classics. We look at scripts by playwrights you may have never heard of. We look at scripts by playwrights that you definitely studied in high school. We look at scripts that are from like a very specific kind of community in the United States. We look at scripts that are so general and milquetoast as to play on Broadway. We look at so many different kinds of. That was like a subtle shot at Broadway that I just like.
It wasn't subtle.
That was in there.
That was a sidewinder.
Sorry, Broadway, but not that sorry. So the point being, we do our best to look at a huge collection of plays. We try to be as different as we can because we think that bringing scripts that are as different as possible to your plate, to your listening ears, is one of the things that we can do well on this podcast. So we do that. But every season, we take 1 month of that season, 4 episodes, and we look at scripts that have something in common rather than scripts that are as different as possible. And we've done a huge variety of types of themed months. We've done a month where we look at only Arthur Miller plays or David Henry Hwang plays. We've done a month where we looked at musicals. And we've also done some more ethereal kinds of themed months where we looked at plays with magical elements in them and many other things besides. This themed month is a sort of a sequel or a follow-up or just another themed month with the same principle as one we've done before. We are here for Mini Month Part 2.
Mini Month Part 2, yes, returning to a love theme because it's a whole set of theater that we don't get to talk about all that often in the kind of normal run of the show. We're going to be doing short plays, one-act plays, not exclusively one-act plays, but definitely kind of in that shorter category. Those plays that like you see multiple of them in a night sort of things, and can kind of pack a big punch, kind of dwell on one theme for a little while, and excited to see the conversation that comes out of them. Before when we did this, the first iteration of this themed month, it was cool to see the sort of like form conversations we were having, and excited to see what sorts of conversations are generated from these great short plays in the coming month.
Yeah, this should be a really interesting month of plays because it's a form theme. The actual content of the plays probably won't have that much in common play to play, but the way in which they're presented, they're packaged, they're published, they're advertised often does in this sort of short play genre. In our first iteration of Mini Month, we looked at plays that were more approximately the same length or thereabouts, plays that, you know, you would sort of call one acts or short plays. This mini month, we've sort of spread that a little bit wider. The first 2 episodes are, I would call them very short plays or 10-minute plays. And then the second 2 episodes are more traditional length one acts or short plays that run in that like, 40 to 60 minute range, somewhere in there. So we'll have kind of a pair of conversations about, 10-minute plays, very short plays versus one acts or regular short plays. And that should be interesting in and of itself. There are really, really fantastic pieces of art out there in this form. They do not get the airtime that full-length plays do, in the same way that novellas don't get the same airtime that novels do. Something about shorter just like doesn't ring for our American
yeah.
ears. We're like, bigger, longer, better. We want it as big as possible. But short
Programming.
plays, these packaged, like concise, flavor-packed pieces of art they have a lot to offer. I'm a huge fan of the 10-minute play. And if you know anything about the development of the 10-minute play, you'll probably have a sense of why I like 10-minute plays, because the 10-minute play is really wrapped up in the Actors Theater of Louisville and the generation of that form, and the way that Actors Theater of Louisville championed 10-minute plays coming into this sort of new era of playwriting. And now 10-minute plays are more commonly written than one acts by contemporary American playwrights, pretty much across the board. So as we're in this sort of first pair of plays for themed month, these 10-minute plays, these very short plays, we're looking at something that is really, it maybe is not quite in its heyday. That was probably the Knots or the early 2010s, but it is still very much part of the lexicon. 10-minute play festivals are everywhere.
Yeah, just kind of it's so accessible, so cool for playwrights to get to write those kind of packed in one theme that you're really leaning into, and also great for those actors who need like short rehearsal times. I know I'm starting to fall into that category more often of like, hey, I just want to engage in theater and would love to not have to memorize a 70-page script. It's a great way to still get to do that and have just a great night of theater. If you have like a robust theater community in your area, putting on a 10-minute theater festival is a great way to get everyone involved. So super cool to be jumping into that topic, and super cool to be jumping into this play that we're talking about today first, because amongst the 10-minute plays that perhaps you've interacted with, surely if you've interacted it in the kind of college theater scene, or looking for scenes for auditions, or any of that sort of vein, Sure Thing by David Ives surely has risen to the top of the basket as you've looked through those 10-minute plays.
I am sure that even if you don't recognize this particular title, as we begin to talk about it, you will recognize it. It's a very popular 10-minute play. It might be, I don't know, Jackson, is it the most popular 10-minute play?
I don't know.
Just as a standalone, like, it's got to be up there. Now, it's... in part, that's just because of the name David Ives. You probably know the name David Ives. If you don't, you're going to recognize some of the stuff as we get into the context. David Ives is a absolute short play, 10-minute play kingpin. I mean, this guy is the guy for 10-minute and short plays. His anthology of 10-minute short plays, not all of them are 10 minutes, but they're, in that short play category. His anthology, All in the Timing, is the example piece. Well, I can't think of a fancier
exemplar
word for that, but exemplar.
Yeah.
There you go. It is the anthology, and it is still a huge deal. For a while, this anthology of short plays, I'm stealing from my own context section now, was the most performed play in the country besides Shakespeare.
Wow.
This anthology of short plays was the most performed piece of dramatic work in the country besides Shakespeare. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Is it not? I mean, I would never have been able to guess that. Give me 200 guesses on what was the most performed play after Shakespeare for that particular year. I would not have gotten to All in the Timing. I mean, they wouldn't have even flown my radar.
And part of that is some of what we've already said, and some of what we'll probably continue to say, is just the accessibility of these scenes, because they're oftentimes real scenes, oftentimes a little bit magical sometimes, but they're really interesting. They're so kind of visceral because of the shortness of them, and again, you get to have a broad, like, I think All in the Timing, I'm holding my copy here, there's 6 one-act comedies in here, so you have 6 different little plays that you get to have a big cast for, but each of the scenes only has a small number of people on stage, maybe. So it's great for that. It's great I imagine houses are just so excited to get plays arranged like this. And certainly I have been the couple times that I've interacted with this anthology.
No, it'll be really fun to talk about. Let's do our Patreon plug so that we can jump into this
Yes,
conversation. I think we're both eager.
getting excited to jump into the actual content of the episode. But before we do, we simply must, just out of the gratefulness of our hearts, thank all of our patrons over at patreon.com/NoScriptPodcast for being patrons of the show. Thank you all so much for being willing to jump in and help out the show in this way. Those of you who are longtime listeners of the show know that we love getting to do this show. It is a labor of love for us. We love getting to come up with the scripts of the year and the season, and also for the themed months. And it is also not a free endeavor. There's various costs associated with running a podcast. Many of you probably know that podcasting is a somewhat prevalent thing in the country, and it's not a free endeavor, and the patrons make it possible. So thank you so much to everyone who has decided to become a patron of the show. If you're thinking of trying to find a way to be a part of the No Script community in another way, beyond just listening to the weekly episodes, Patreon's a great way to do that. You get access to patron-only posts over there. You get access to the scripts ahead of time. There's a couple of different tiers of membership. The lowest one, as we always said, is just $1, $12 over the course of a year. It's a great way to help out the show. It helps us out enormously with the various fees and costs associated with buying scripts, running podcasts, all that business. So if you're looking for a way to kind of interact a little bit more with the No Script community and help out the show, making sure that we continue to get to have these unscripted conversations about theater's best scripts, you can find us at patreon.com/NoScriptPodcast. Thank you to all the patrons who have already headed over there. We'll see you over there.
And today we have a very exciting announcement. We have a new patron at the playwright level. This is the level of patronship at which we want to thank you verbally on the show. We also do this at the end of every season. We go through everybody at that level, and then we like to announce folks that have chosen to support us at that level. For the folks that are supporting us at the $1 a month level, we are also grateful to you. But part of the increasing benefits, if you know how Patreon works, is that we increase the benefits for the more that you choose to give every month. And so for this particular level, we like to say your name on the podcast to give you a big shout out and a big thank you. So Jonathan Edge has joined us as a supporter at the playwright level. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for supporting the show.
Yeah.
Your monthly contribution makes No Script possible. There's no way around that. That is just simply a truism of the podcast. Your support makes the podcast possible to happen. So thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to all of our supporters as well.
Yes, thank you all so much. Head on over, check out the tiers, check out the space. We'll see you over there.
And now back to the script.
Here we go.
Hey, okay, so these conversations are supposed to be abbreviated conversations because we're talking about short plays. Weirdly, this is probably like the latest in the episode we've ever gotten to the end of the Patreon plug. We spent a long time in the intro, and then the Patreon plug was long. So we're in like this crunch time.
Yeah.
So this one might be a little longer than we anticipated, just so you know. But in order to accommodate that, we're doing very abbreviated contexts and abbreviated synopses. So just so everybody knows that this is not the same level of context we would usually give. Playwright David Ives, new to the podcast. Again, like we said in the intro, he's really known for his short plays. As a young man, he attended Northwestern University, that bastion of playwriting in Chicago, majoring in English, and that was graduated in the early 70s, and ended up teaching English in Germany for a while, but eventually got an MFA from the Yale School of Drama in 1984. I know that some, like, snobbish theater people look down on David Ives because his plays they sometimes are a little gimmicky. They're like big comedy. I would call them like populist theater. But the dude has an MFA in drama from Yale. So, you know, you can kind of shut up if that's your opinion of David Ives. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Got an MFA in playwriting from one of the best schools in the country to get your MFA in playwriting from, and is literally one of the most popular playwrights in American history. So, don't know what to tell you. That's kind of as good as it gets, I would think. In 1972, he had his first play produced. He had been writing since a very, very young age. But he really sort of came into form in 1987 when he started to have these short plays produced, which would become his calling card. This included Sure Thing, the play that we're talking about today, as well as some titles you may recognize. Variations on the Death of Trotsky is a very popular David Ives play, as well as The Universal Language. Jackson worked on The Universal Language some in college. We both have a history with Sure Thing, as well as if you started to go through David Ives plays, I'm guessing both of us would be like, oh, I've done that one. Yeah, I worked
Right.
on that one. I worked
Yeah.
on that
Yep.
one. And probably you out there would too. Part of that is that like our college theater program, the professors really were into David Ives. That may not be true everywhere, but that was certainly true for our background. In 1993, a lot of those short plays that Ives had been writing were packaged together to create All in the Timing, which is this anthology of short plays that we have discussed. And that premiered in New York City. And then for, I think it was the 95-96 season, as I said, it literally was the most produced play in the country, besides the plays of William Shakespeare, was this anthology of short plays, All in the Timing. An incredible achievement. I'm going to skip a bunch of time here where he was still writing, doing a lot of stuff. He joined a musical project. A lot of cool stuff happened in his career, but I want to get to 2011. His play Venus in Fur made its Broadway debut, which really vaulted him back into the sort of American consciousness after his short play popularity. And Venus in Fur became the most produced play in the country after William Shakespeare for the 2013-2014 season. If you've been actively in the theater community for at least that long, you probably remember the Venus in Fur craze. It seemed to be everywhere for a time. That is why. So he still is writing. He was part of this project to do the adaptions of books for a lot of different musicals. In that span, in 2004, he co-wrote the book for Irving Berlin's White Christmas. And right now, his career is that he's doing a lot of adaptions of old plays, contemporaries of Shakespeare, older than that. He's writing contemporary adaptions of these scripts, seems to be what he's working on right now. Again, David Ives is like a pillar, a cornerstone of what built the commercial American theater. And now his stuff is done at the high school level, at the college level, at the community theater level. It's still getting semi-pro and professional productions. His work is everywhere. And you probably will recognize some of the titles if you start rolling through his playlist.
Yeah, and not just the titles, but like the lines too. At least for me, there's like so many lines that like pop into my head from various productions of David Ives plays. He's just super witty, super interesting take on the world. Excited to get to engage his play. Excited to get to engage this play in particular. As Jacob said, we're pretty Jacob knows for sure that he's worked on this play, and I'm like at least like 70% sure that I was in this play as one of the characters. It was like
I directed it in probably 2021 or maybe the late part of 2020. It was definitely during the height of the COVID pandemic, and there were several outdoor arts festivals in Arkansas where I was living, and I was hired to direct a couple of, I think I directed 2 different casts to present it at several different arts festivals because it's so travelable. We needed 2 chairs and a bell.
Right. Yep. I'm pretty sure I did it in that like zone of senior theater that I wasn't sleeping much. So I'm pretty sure that I was in it. But some of the lines certainly ring true. We'll jump into the conversation here. Fortunately, the synopsis of this is going to be quite short. This is a play. It's set in a cafe with a couple of chairs. As Jacob just said, it's a couple of chairs, a table, and a bell is kind of the only necessary things that you need for it. 2 characters, Bill and Betty, both in their late 20s, as the script calls for. And it's a short little, like maybe 10-page play about their interaction. Their interaction moves from kind of a first meeting at the table to leaving together, having kind of at least been interested enough in each other to kind of go on a date, I think would be a good way.
And it's wholesome. They're not going back to anybody's hotel room or apartment. They're going to go to the movies together.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, well, after that they might, for sure.
But
no judgment. I'm just saying,
no
like,
judgment.
it's not like they met and are going to hook up. They're going to go
Right,
to a movie
right,
together.
right.
It's like a real date. That's really
Yeah.
what I was saying. It's like a real date, not a quote unquote date. You know
Right,
what I
right.
mean?
Not air quotes date.
Right, a real date. Imagine that. And maybe this play feels like it's from the 80s.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, it says yeah. Yeah, but the way there is through a series of restarts, a series of perhaps misconnections or found connections, and that those restarts are brought about by a bell. Now, if you know this play, you know the bell. You probably know a couple different versions of the way that the bell finds its way into the script. But each time the characters interact, they kind of go on one line of thought for a little while, and eventually something goes wrong for one of the characters. Either they say something wrong, or something they say doesn't resonate with one of the other ones, and the conversation kind of comes to an end, either by just awkward silence or like, please go away. And almost always the responding character says, okay, yeah, I'll go away, or they know that something has gone wrong. And then the bell rings, and then you reset to a couple lines back, and you take another run at it. This kind of repeats over and over. It covers a lot of different themes, both just conversation, like how to have a good conversation. You have kind of interaction around Faulkner, and all sorts of Sound and the Fury and his book, and like how to have a good conversation versus like a one-sided conversation. That's often or that's how the conversation is reset sometimes. You have beginning to have more interest in each other and each other's romantic involvement with other people, like checking to see, do you have a boyfriend right now? Do you have a girlfriend right now? And you have a number of resets in that category as well. You have a trip to the movies, and what sort of content of the movies you enjoy / demand the other person enjoy in order to spend time with you. And eventually kind of building towards what your hopes and dreams are for the future. And slowly you weather through the weeding out of the bell, or the kind of continued interaction of these characters. More and more resonance builds between them until the very end of the play, when about a whole page and a half-ish, page and a quarter goes by without the bell ringing, which in the course of a 10-page play, that's a lot of the play. So
and it does feel long, having worked on it. Like, you can really, the writing is so good that you can feel it when you reach the end of the play and you start to go 3, 4, 5 different back and forth exchanges without the bell going off. You start to get, the play really starts to pick up pace.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, it's working. And then of course the play is over. The writing is really, really effective at that moment. It's effective throughout, but it's because of how often the bell goes off before, the end of the play really works.
Yeah, it's kind of like that acting game or that improv game where like you'll be long form improving, you'll say something and someone from off stage says change that or something like that, and you have to reset it. By the middle of the play, you're getting a lot of these bells going off, and you're like, I gotta find something. You get the sense that these characters are trying to find some way to connect, and kind of keep coming back and back and back over and over these sort of interactions to find the way to each other. Which is, so it's a sweet little play. It's a funny play. And kind of takes you on the journey of these two characters meeting for the first time and deciding to spend more time together as a result of their somewhat, I guess, somewhat magically reset or interactions with the bell going off all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't ask questions.
Yeah.
And that truly is what David Ives does so well, is that his theatrical imagination is so vast and incredible that he is able to say, what if this thing were true? And he is able to write at such a high level that you just accept that it is true. And so the premise of this play is that as this couple is meeting in a cafe, a bell keeps resetting their conversation anytime they say something that would end the conversation, and we just accept it. And nobody, throughout the play, you never go like, where is the bell? Who is the bell? Is the bell God? Is this is this magic? Is this, it does not come up, and it does not matter. It is part of the world of the show, and we accept that, and we become engaged in the question of, will this couple get together?
Yeah, for sure. And while we're on the bell and that, I think So the play says in the front, I'd be interested to hear what you did in your production, but the play says in the front that the bell is not present in the play. Like you don't see the bell, the characters don't ring the bell, you don't see the characters doing anything with the bell. The bell originates from off stage by some, like you said, something out there. The bell is ringing. And I've seen that ignored. And I've seen it not work sometimes, but sometimes it does work with that ignored. Sometimes the characters like bring out their own bell partway through the play is what I've seen a couple times. Like it emerges from a pocket or a purse or something like that as they start to really drill in on the other one. But that's sort of like, at least I think that leans into what you're saying of this, like, let's don't ask questions about the bell is kind of the way that it's written of like this. It's off stage. Don't worry about it. It's just the magic of, or the given circumstances even of this play.
And yeah, it's just like it is the way the world works for this particular encounter, and it works in different ways. Like, I guess what I'm really saying is that the bell causes the conversation to reset in different ways. And truthfully, one of the features of this play that feels like it's from the 80s is that sometimes the bell causes the conversation to restart for something that I think in 2023 we would say like might not be a particularly
it's a little
good reason to
judgmental.
reject. Yeah, it's a little judgmental. Like at one point, I think it's Bill is talking about going to college and he's like, I got a 2.0 ding, 3.0 ding, 4.0
Right,
in college. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's not the most extreme example of that. There are other examples of things that you sort of have to work your way around to produce it nowadays. But the premise of it is so effective, and I'm not sure exactly what you learn about the characters, because if you drill too far down into it, you do have to start asking questions about the bell.
Yeah.
Like at one point they say, I hate Faulkner. Ding, I love Faulkner. It's like, which version of that was the real character?
Yeah.
Which was like the bell-induced character? Are they lying? Were they lying before and now they're telling the truth? Or has the bell, like, are we in like a multiverse, like a Marvel, like we've switched to another version of the universe where this character loves Faulkner?
Right. And I think that is actually a pretty important piece of trying to figure out this play, is kind of deciding whether what the characters are doing is masking themselves or whether you're experiencing an alternate version of themselves. Because it takes on a different flavor. If it's just like, oh, you didn't like that, I'll lie about it.
Right. And I don't think that's what's implied by the play. Do you?
No, I don't.
I think if I were like trying to rationalize the bell and how this play works, I would say we are like shifting universes.
Absolutely.
To every bell ding is sending us to a new universe where the thing that was wrong about the conversation before is actually correct. That would be like, I think, how I would rationalize what's happening.
I agree with that. I think that's the most fun. I think it's the way that you laugh the most. It also, I think, comes out in the writing. There's the one line in particular that stands out to me. It's the one that still sticks in my mind from whenever I interacted with this play sometime before. But there's like they get into politics at one point, and it starts with, "I'm a straight ticket Republican," and ding, "I'm a straight ticket Democrat." Ding. I prefer to think of myself as a citizen of the universe.
Ding.
Ding. And I'd vote my beliefs, and I just like pay attention. Like that's
I don't like labels is like where it ends up landing. And boy, having directed it, that line gets a big old laugh. And it's, if you imagine that line in like the early 90s, like it still probably was funny, but nowadays with like political partisanship so toxic, like everybody is just desperate for that joke.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it leans into
some ways. Yeah, in some ways, that's like how this play functions, is a series of jokes. I mean, if you think of the bell as the thing that prompts a punchline, you you get basically one joke after another, and you just go joke to joke to joke. Like, for example, Betty says they're talking about Faulkner. We moved on from that. Bill says, yeah, I read it in college. Where was college? I went to Oral Roberts University. Ding. Where was college? I was lying. I never really went to college. I just like to party. Ding. So there's the joke there. And then we get the third of these dings about college, and we get the final joke. So she says, where was college? I was lying. Never really went to college. I just like to party. Ding. Where was college? Harvard. And then the conversation moves on with no ding. Did you like Faulkner? I love Faulkner. So the punchline is Harvard, right? And it's just a series of really clever joke writing. We make a punchline out of Oral Roberts University, ding. You make a punchline out of liking to party and never going to college, ding. And then you make a punchline out of the fact that Harvard is the successful thing that moves the conversation forward. It's like the perfect person went to Harvard. I don't think anybody actually thinks that, but that's just like, that's the joke that is being made. And if you think of this play as a series of jokes, it's highly effective. If you try to think about it like in the story character development lens, that's when it like gets hard to figure. What are these characters on a journey? Their journey is like trying to get together, but their personalities have to change in really big ways in order for that to happen. So I guess we're in like alternate universe versions of these characters where their personalities didn't have to change because this is who they were all along. It gets a little hazy.
Oh, right. Yeah, from a character analysis standpoint, it's like, what's happening? But I think there is an interesting. There's still like a moral sounds so stuffy, but something that it's saying about interactions in that, and it's kind of in the name of the anthology that it's all in the timing, and that connections are such a ephemeral thing.
And all in the timing. The name of the anthology comes from this play.
Yeah. Yep. Right away. And this play is arranged at the front of that anthology, so you get the title right away. And you get the sense that these characters by the end of the play do resonate with each other. They're capable of resonating with each other. However, it kind of speaks into the I don't know if you're the sort of person who's listening to this and you like end an interaction and kind of go home and think about it for the next 3 days. I'm one of those people. And so you kind of wonder, how could that have gone differently?
What? You who has a podcast about theater is one of those people?
Shocking. I know. I'm really bringing out revelations today. But yeah, it's that sort of play where it's kind of engaging that moment of like, how, what's the possibilities of relationships? What if you could try again if you felt like you didn't quite show up presently in a moment, or show up well to your conversation partner, or accidentally talked a little bit too much about why you like Woody Allen movies so much, or which is something in the play. Not to really call you out for your Woody Allen movies. I love Woody Allen movies, but it is that sort of play that leans into that question. What if you could change your fate? What if you could reset a moment and give it another try and see if there was a way that a conversation or a relationship could have worked out differently than it did?
I agree, and I want to give the line that inspires that before I make a little bit of a qualm with it. The line that you're describing is, early in the play, they're talking about reading Faulkner. Bill says, you may not have been ready for him. You have to hit these things at the right moment or it's no good. Betty says, that's happened to me. Bill says, it's all in the timing. And then that line becomes one of the lines that the ding sends you back to a couple of exchanges. So you get it's all in the timing, like maybe 3 or 4 times in the next sequence of dings. So that's the line, right? That all in the timing. I think you're right that this play, like one of the themes, if it has such a thing, is like how hard it is to hit things at the right moment. All the things that have to go right. And that in some ways, this play is a celebration of when things go right. It's like I can't think of the adage itself, but there's like an old adage which reflects around like, we only remember the times things went wrong. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, that didn't work out. And that's what I remember. But when things go right, we forget about it. But part of this play is celebrating, like, look at how many things had to happen successfully for this thing, the two of them deciding to go on a date, to go right. And they probably, you know, the final versions of them in that universe where it worked out probably would never recognize, like, how many points just in this one conversation had to successfully happen in order for this to go right. It's all in the timing. It's a celebration. I mean, David Ives plays are notoriously sort of joyful. And that is this. I think this play is joyful in that way. It's not bitter or sarcastic. It's a celebration of success when things happen in the right way. Now, here's the qualm I take with it a little bit, which is that it's not just that they get dinged every time they say something wrong and they need to correct something that they said to be more successful. They get dinged about like their biographies, right? Where like the jokes that we just went through is like where this guy went to college,
Right, their CVs.
how he votes, yeah, his CVs, right? So that part of it is a little strange in the like. In order for this exchange to go right, they literally had to have been different people.
Right.
And that is, in some ways, that theme maybe would have come out stronger if it had just been a matter of like saying things the right way, not ruining it yourself instead of having to, as you say, alter their CVs. But the jokes are just so stinking effective around all that I think you would lose something of the pace and energy and hilarity of the play if you put that so much of that into it.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's kind of a well, we started this bike and we're gonna follow it all the way to the end sort of energy that happens in the second half of the play. I think the most of that theme comes out in the first half where they're talking about books, they're talking about passions, and you kind of see the different ways that like there's especially one line where I think Bill goes off on a topic of Faulkner and as a whole, like, you know, quarter of the page just him talking, and then it's reset and the same information comes out in a back and forth conversation between the two of them, and you're like, oh, this is how you could show up better to a conversation partner rather than just monologuing. But then you kind of you get the fun. Basically it's like, okay, we built this world, let's see how far we can go. and yeah, consistently towards the end they're just kind of revamping the resumes for each other rather than just trying to figure out how to engage differently.
Yeah, and it works really well. And David Ives, his writing is so snappy, it's so effective, it's so clever, it's so, I mean, there's almost not enough that you could say about it in praise of how well he writes dialogue. And not just dialogue, but like the actions behind the dialogues. Like a play like this sort of works on itself. I mean, as somebody who directed it, there's just like, if you have the right cast, there's just not a lot of direction needed.
Yeah.
The play is pretty much ready to go when you hand it to two very capable actors. And some of that is just how well David Ives is able to put experiences onto the page.
Yeah, just the way that, you know, you get the sense, I don't know, it's like, it's sort of like a slice of life, but it's like a slice of like 30 lives, or at least 30 conversations. Yeah. of like, yeah, I've definitely had this interaction before in a coffee shop or in a conversation or after a class or after watching a play. You see so many like really just genuine moments of conversation, and you're like, oh my gosh, I remember the last time someone told me they were the citizen of the universe. Like that's literally it has this sort of visceral recalling that happens from these just super witty, super quick interactions between these two.
Yeah. So quickly to wrap up, we're almost out of time here. Just to think about this play in its form, it is short enough that it probably doesn't work as a piece in and of itself. Like I have a hard time imagining an audience gathering just to see this, because it's so short. It's, you know, it's 10 minutes. I directed it as part of a larger arts festival where there was music, there was speeches, there was all kinds of stuff. And then there was this short moment of kind of comedy in the middle of it. It's published as part of an anthology, which you could perform all together. Again, the whole package, All in the Timing, was like one of the most produced plays in the country in the mid 90s. And I think we'll see that with these other sort of very short plays, that they really need to exist as an audience experience alongside other things.
Yeah, we kind of are used to 2 hours of programming when we go to a thing, or at least an hour of programming. And you need to have something else to get people to come out for the night. So doing this play, you definitely have to think about what you're doing alongside of it. Or the alternative would be, this play, this is such a good script for audition scenes. If you're doing audition in a duo, if you're doing scenes for competition, but if you're wanting to do the play in its entirety, an evening probably ought to be planned around it, because it is so much fun. You get to see quite a bit of different sides of humanity if you do the whole anthology. I love the idea of like pairing it with music and other things. It's a great breath of fresh air to insert into something else, because it's just fun. It makes you think a little bit, but for the most part it makes you laugh a lot. And yeah, it's a nice kind of refresh or reset, or serves as a great way to enter into the anthology where it's placed within the 6 plays.
Yep, I agree. And I think that's all the time we have for this one. We're trying to keep these conversations abbreviated
Snappy.
to match the form with the content. So, thanks for listening to the first episode of Mini Month, Part 2.
Yes, indeed. Our conversation here on the podcast has come to an end, but that does not mean that we have to stop talking about this play. We'd love to chat about this play, Sure Thing, from All in the Timing, by David Ives, with you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at the username @NoScriptPodcast. And that's really where we would recommend you coming and finding us and chatting about it, because then you get the chance to talk to other folks in the No Script community about the play too. It's a cool way to chat. A lot of times reading plays can be a solitary endeavor. I'm sure many of you who are planning seasons coming for next year coming up would like to have someone else who has read the script that you're talking about. So find us on the social medias. We also have a Gmail though, noscriptpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on any of those sites. We'd love to keep chatting about Sure Thing with you.
Absolutely. If you liked this conversation or any of our other conversations, please pass the podcast on, to your family, your friends, anybody you know that likes scripts, stories, or just talking about good writing. Send them our way. They can find us on Podbean, on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, lots of places where you find podcasts. We're there. You can also like us on Facebook, and a link to the new episode appears every Monday when we publish. Until next Monday, when we continue with Mini Month Part 2, I'm Jacob Mann Christensen.
And I am Jackson Nikolai. Thanks for listening to No Script, the podcast.